It's trade that generates the wealth in the world. It's no accident that the poorest countries in the world are those who don't trade or simply have nothing to trade. Trade is the lifeblood of the world, and it's very much responsible for the standard of life that everybody in this room enjoys, believe me. Thanks, Ben. So, we are governed. Terry very correctly referred to the importance of good governance. The marine industry internationally is governed by the International Maritime Organization. It's based in London. It has 169 members. Every maritime country in the world, and even some non-maritime countries in the world, are members of the IMO. It's responsible for safety of life at sea and protection of the marine environment. It says it up there front and center on the homepage of the IMO. Thank you. Additional shipping regulations. Before a ship is built, it's designed, it's approved by a classification society right through the life of that ship. The whole history of the ship is documented and monitored by a classification society. And there's some of the classification societies. Some of you in the room will be familiar with those names. Norske Veritas, Lloyd's Register. They're very well-known names. Below that, you have this thing, what we call flag state in Canada. That's port state control under the auspices of Transport Canada. Transport Canada targets for inspection 20% of the ships that come into Canada, and it's very strict. If there are deficiencies, the ship will be detained until such time as those deficiencies are remedied. Thanks, Ben. So here's a bit of a perspective. The two tankers here, for those that can, the focus is not great, but there are two tankers there. One is what we call a very large crude carrier, and this is what we mean by very large crude carriers. That's these ships here, 200 to 320,000 tons. The ships that are coming into Port terminal are those smaller ships alongside. So that's a VLCC, a very large crude carrier in our parlance, lightering into what we call an Aframax tanker, which are the ones that are the largest ones that can come into second narrows. Those very large crude carriers actually lighten up sufficiently off the coast of California, and then they go alongside in the Port of Long Beach. The Port of Long Beach is actually dredging as we speak, so that it can, in future, take those very large crude carriers directly alongside. So they are very, very proactive in moving tankers in and out, very much larger ones than anything we're contemplating in second narrows. Thank you, Ben. So oil imports. This is worth considering for a moment. What do we mean by oil imports? And this is barrels per day. So in 2009, there was 65.4 million barrels per day imported to the consuming countries. That is to say those around the world that need it. And I've listed there for you the top 15. Canada, incidentally, is number 15. We are an exporter of oil, but we're also an importer of oil. That's important to recognize. Now that number, 85, what does that represent? Well, there's 7 barrels of oil represents a ton. It could be 7.1, depends on the density of the oil. But in fact, that means that 85 Aframax tankers are going into those consuming countries every day. And from the statistics that Kevin showed you, we're doing less than 2 per week, even on a busy week, through second narrow. So just get some perspective of what's moving. 85 per day worldwide. So if 85 are actually going in, there's 85 coming out as well. It's a lot of traffic worldwide. So it just gives us a little bit of perspective of where we fall in the bigger picture. Thank you. So IMO, go back to the IMO. It regulates traffic schemes. That's something that they do worldwide. That's the Dover Straits. I'm not sure if anybody's actually sailed up and down the Dover Straits. People like Kevin and I have done it a number of times. But just to give you some perspective, 25% of the world trades, 600 commercial transits. That's to say 600 movements per day, ships going up and down, ferries crossing and so on. So in terms of traffic levels, it's huge. 40 million tons of oil go through that passage every year. Thank you. Looking at the Malacca Straits, it's worth noting Singapore handles 130,000 ships a year, including 23,000 tankers. So this is colossal. They do this very efficiently. So what we're talking about in terms of the very low level of tanker traffic, potentially on the north coast if that project were to be approved, and today what we're handling on the south coast here, in comparison to these worldwide ports, major ports, we're at a very low level indeed. And I want you to gain some perspective of this. Thank you. The Bosphorus Straits, similar situation, 50,000 ships a year, of which 5,500 are tankers. Ben? I won't go to this. This is really just showing you the route through. Anybody been through Bosphorus? Yeah? Yeah? Cruise ship? Yeah? Yeah. It's an interesting passage, isn't it? They handle 5,500 tankers a year, 130 to 140 ships per day. Thanks, Ben. I'm going to do this in 10 minutes, I guarantee. We're often saying, well, come on, you're not being realistic here. The second narrows is, it's narrow. It's, by definition, it's narrow. Well, okay, so how can we compare this and help people to understand? 2009, there were 586 tanker transits of the Panama Canal, 13.4 million tons. It doesn't get any narrower than the Panama Canal. Thank you. The voluntary tanker exclusion zone, I think most of you in the room will be familiar with it. What it actually is a line outside of which tankers that are trading north-south between Alaska and Puget Sound, through which they access through the Wendover Strait, they're required or requested to stay outside of that voluntary exclusion zone. The reason for that is, should they get into difficulty, it allows adequate time for tug assistance to come to their aid. So that's what the voluntary exclusion zone is all about. It's not a moratorium. Thank you. I put this number in because it's important to understand. If you look at the green above these green lines here, this represents the steady increase in the export of crude oil, in the carriage of crude oil. And it goes from 1992 up to 2007. But whilst that increase in oil is quite notable, you'll see the decreasing number of spills. This is the number of tanker spill incidents up to 2009. It's a decreasing graph. And I'm going to help you understand why, whilst we're carrying more oil, there's many less incidents. Thanks, Ben. And air accidents. One of the things that we don't always understand in the marine industry is why we are somewhat in the focus whenever there's an incident, because you know what, there were 6 major air accidents in 2009. And I don't think anybody is contemplating restrictions on YVR. Thanks, Ben. So what else has changed? Let me help you. Training has changed. Quality of vetting has changed. Construction standards. Does everybody know what a double hull looks like? This is a profile, the bottom picture here. It's a double skin. It's called a double hull tanker. That's one under construction. That came in after the Exxon Valdez incident. And by the way, the industry, we will always wear the Exxon Valdez. We will always be held accountable for the Exxon Valdez. But I think we learned a lot of lessons, but more importantly, we've applied those lessons. The sharing and adoption of best practices, and most definitely, there's a culture of safety and respect for the environment in the marine industry. And I'll help you understand that. What is not probably visible from where you're standing, where you're sitting rather, is the graph on the right. And this is grams per ton per kilometer of CO2 emissions. On the left, that's for small ships, for large ships. The next number, the blue, is for smaller ships. The red is for trucks, and on the right-hand side is for air freight. So you'll see that deep sea shipping, per ton, per kilometer of cargo carried, is by far the smallest emitter of CO2. In fact, shipping is responsible for about 2.7% of world greenhouse gas emissions, and we're taking very seriously our efforts to get that down. Thanks, Ben. Personal pilotage units, Kevin referred to some of the investments we've made, all this money that Kevin is spending on training. A lot of it has gone into this. The pilot essentially on his laptop has a total replication of the vessel navigational systems on board, a total backup the pilot has at his hand. And we do a lot of bridge simulator training. Kevin referred to the fact that he escorted global TV journalists down to Seattle to show them exactly what we do. And I'm almost done.